complete review of The Outer Brood, EverQuest's 31st expansion, and we're also talking to the artist that created all of the weapons in the expansion. And what parts of the PlayStation version of EverQuest appear in The Outer Brood? It's all next on The EverQuest Show.
I'm on top of the world and now I'm living, and the good just gets better, keeps on giving. Not even close to the end, it's just beginning. Life is getting lighter while the days are getting brighter. Gotta celebrate life and get excited about good times and good living. Come on, shout it out. Hey! Take it up, take it over, take it out of control. Today I'm freeing my soul and now you got me singing.
Hello and welcome into the EverQuest Show. I'm Fading here in the EverQuest Show studios for our 31st episode, appropriately enough for the 31st expansion for EverQuest. But before we get to that review of The Outer Brood, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you continue to support the channel by clicking like and subscribe. And first we have to talk about the Fippy Awards. Yeah, it's just about time for the Fippies to come around, but before we can vote for the best of the past year, we have to have some nominations, and that's where you come in. It's time for you to nominate your favorite zones, NPCs, and headlines from the past year for both EverQuest and EverQuest II. The link to the Fippy Awards nominations are in the description for this video, but wait until after this video before you head there. I'll remind you. And this year, I'm trying something new with the Fippy Awards. First, I'm looking for nominations for the best content creators or streamers for EQ or EQ2. It doesn't have to be their primary content, but it should be a part of their regular content. And here's where I really want you to have some fun. Do you think you have the best guild in all of EQ or EQ2? Are your raids smooth as the ocean of tears? Or maybe it's just a welcoming environment where new players are helped to get back into the game? Well, I'm looking for submissions and nominations for Guild of the Year for EQ or EQ2. You can nominate any guild you like, or your guild can create a video submission to be nominated, showing us why you think your guild is the best. Get creative, and the nominees may be featured right here on the EverQuest Show for the Fippy Awards. All of the details can be found on EverQuestShow.com on what we're looking for in video submissions. And many of the zones up for nominations this year for the Fippy Awards will be released on December 3rd, 2024, as EverQuest launches their 31st expansion. So what can you expect? Well, here's the EverQuest Show's official review of The Outer Brood. With the anticipated launch of EverQuest's next expansion, it's important to know where we've gone over these past 25 years. Several episodes back, I discussed the ages of EverQuest development, the classical age of the early expansions, the golden age of the Planes of Power, and a renaissance after the Serpent Spine. And if you missed that episode, I highly recommend you go check out episode 26. But the most important aspect of that story was that after an age of nostalgia, where we went back and revisited all of the content of Kunarg, Velius, Luckland, and Planes of Power, I posed the question, could we be entering a new age of development? And here we are at the 31st expansion for Norath, The Outer Brood, and it solidifies the argument that we're now in a new age of EverQuest development, one that I'm now calling the Age of Legends, legendary Norathian ideas or stories that now come front and center. So what in the hell does any of this have to do with The Outer Brood? Well, everything. It's a new story, but it picks up on old lore. To sum up the expansion, though, in 2 words, it may be a little bit surprising. The Outer Brood is essentially space dragons. But before you think that's a bridge too far, I think once you hear how it fits into the lore of EverQuest, you'll actually like the take for this expansion. So let's start with the beautifully done key art for The Outer Brood. This was created by Aaron Bisnett, and the key art gives us the first impression of what is actually happening in this expansion. Front and center is a beautifully armored dragon, but you quickly notice that this dragon, and all of the other dragons in the scene, have 4 wings. Okay, that's a bit different. But the most significant item in the piece is the Leviathan, a gigantic dragon with an entire city on its back floating in the Norathian sky. But why are they here? Well, this has actually been in the making since Claws of Vishen expansion. Vulak, who was angry with the roles of mortals and dragons on Norath and for failing to live up to Vishen's destiny for Norath, he put out a call into space, to Vishen. And if that seems far-fetched, just remember that in the original launch video for EQ, Vishen was a giant dragon in space. Well now, far away on distant worlds, the Outer Brood dragons, which are cousins to the Norathian dragons, they're the ones that receive that message. Once they're here, they're not impressed with their Norathian cousins. They decide that we don't deserve Norrath and that they'll be taking over the planet. And with the fate of literally the entire world of Norrath at stake, factions that were once at odds with one another have now come together, along with you, the Norrathian players, to save it from the onslaught of the Outer Brood. Okay, so now that our lore lesson is done, let's dive into the zones for the Outer Brood. The entrance zone for the expansion is Hodstock Hills. It's a lush, forested, and coastal area just north of Freeport, between Freeport and Nariak. And EverQuest Online Adventure players, you're going to want to take note. The waypoints in this zone will be very familiar to you, as this zone is composed of many areas from the PlayStation version of EQ, set 500 years prior to our Norrath. There's Hodstock, Timby, Moolin's Reach, Bauble by Water, the Green Rift, and Shark Island with its fortress ruins. It's a beautiful and very large zone with lots of varied play areas. So why Hodstock Hills? Well, because this is the point of first contact for the alien invaders. It's where they first meet the Norrathians. But the Outer Brood uses soldiers and servants to do their bidding, placing the Scale Wrought to scout Norrath and launch an attack. The Scale Wrought have no names or autonomy, and they serve solely at the pleasure of the Outer Brood, or the Aurelians. But Hodstock Hills is the only Norrathian zone that you'll visit in the Outer Brood. That is to say that the 5 remaining zones all take place on, or really more importantly, inside the Leviathan. And because the magic used by the Aurelians is much more advanced than what us mere Norrathians are used to, and not to mention the huge cannons that are mounted all over the Leviathan, this makes it incredibly difficult for the Norrathian dragons to take the fight to them, for now. So we take a ride on a griffin to get up to the Leviathan. We arrive on the Great Leviathan and the Theater of Eternity, and from here on out, we spend the rest of the expansion exploring the huge Leviathan. The large scaled plates of the Leviathan make up the ground you walk on in Theater of Eternity, and the city on the back of the Leviathan lies ahead of you, and the Scale Wrought, they are all around. This is part parade ground and part offensive structure, as large number of those huge cannons make up this area. But those cannons can be turned upon you as well, and large portions of the scaly back of the Leviathan are extremely unsafe. We'll need to establish forward camps here, building spires and druid rings to be able to take the battle to the invaders. As you press onward onto the Leviathan, you get a direct route into Aureate Covert. This area acts as shelter and quarters for the Scale Wrought, with constant reminders that they are servitors to the Outer Brood. Here you'll find room upon room of various Scale Wrought and all the necessary support for the planned invasion. Training rooms, healing rooms, repair shops, and you won't find any of the Aurelians here, as it would be beneath them to appear in this area. This zone reminds me a bit of a larger and more updated Grieg's End, with a maze of rooms and creatures. And from there, we actually begin to head inside the Leviathan, into Harbinger's Cradle. The Leviathan itself is controlled by the Outer Brood, and in doing so, they have shaped the insides and bones of the Leviathan to their needs. In this zone, there are essentially 2 areas. The first is the hatchery area of the zone, with incubating eggs of various servitors and experiments by the Brood Architect to make new creations that rise to support the invasion. It's a colorful zone that has hints of deep shade and a sort of Skittles effect going on. The other significant area in the zone is the transport docking station, where the miniature Leviathans are loaded to transport servitors to Norrath's surface. It's important to remember that we are inside the Leviathan with hollows and docks that are literally carved out of the bones of the beast. But that point is especially notable as you move into perhaps the creepiest zone in the expansion, the Chambers of Puissance. Now, this is going to feel not unlike a colonoscopy as you venture into the deepest bowels of the Leviathan. The hallways are literally alive and moving as you travel from room to room. The vessels and arteries are visible, and there's great effects here that were applied to this 28-year-old engine to make it look like a flow of blood or something organic traveling through the Leviathan. The buildings are created or carved from more of the Leviathan's bones. The pulsating walls are alive and have movement. And you get to the heart of the matter, literally. You see the giant beating heart of the Leviathan, as well as the breathing lungs and more arterial structures. It is one of the more unique zones I've seen in all of EverQuest, and it pushes what artists can convey in the game, even if it does gross me out a little bit. Finally, the end zone of the expansion will be the Gilded Spire. Where Aureate Covert was the home to the Servitors, the Gilded Spire is where finally the golden dragons we call the Aurelians live and travel on the Leviathan. The tower is huge. It's made for those large invader dragons to move about. It's a lavish palace with golden statues of their vision of Vishen. It's essentially an Aurelian city. In the lower levels, the Servitors tend to the needs of their masters, but in the upper levels of the Spire, the Aurelians command and control their assault on Norath. In the control room, General Usaira organizes the invading forces, while the High Priest seeks guidance from Vishen. It's here that you face these huge NPC model dragons in great palatial rooms inside the Gilded Spire. So the expansion contains a total of 6 zones, which is about on par or perhaps a little bit light of some of the previous expansions, but I'll mention a couple of things that may counter that argument. One, most of these zones in the Outer Brood are extremely large. They have plenty of content. In particular, Hodstock Hills, the Gilded Spire, and Chambers of Puissance are physically quite large, and they take a long time to traverse and explore. But also consider that this year, a significant amount of additional content was created for the 25th anniversary, including the Anniversary Tower and all of its levels. But there are also some new features that come with this expansion. The first is the Activated Items keyring. Basically anything that can't fit into the Mount keyring, the Illusion keyring, the Transport keyring, or the Familiar keyring can now fit into the leftover Catch-All Activated Items keyring. It's yet another nice feature to help clear out additional inventory space and to help organize the 25 years of clicky collecting that we have all done. Additionally, and perhaps quite cleverly, is the new class and race combo for the expansion. With the Outer Brood, Dark Elf Rangers are now available. Let the Drist name variations fly. And this combo is not only going to be available on live servers, but also on TLP servers, as long as you own the Outer Brood expansion. So, how would I rate the Outer Brood? Well, as long as you can wrap your head around the space dragon idea, I think the lore is elegantly well done. I think it actually fits well into EverQuest without much of a stretch. Vishen's story was there from the very beginning, and we know from Omens of War that other worlds like Kua were also colonized by the children of Vishen. I genuinely enjoy the storyline, and I'm impressed that this bit of forethought was given way back in the claws of Vishen in preparation for this storyline many expansions later. The artists really do push this 25-year-old game so far into what they can do, and the Outer Brood is no exception. So making Hodstock Hills feel very Norathian and Antonican, to the incredible details that are put into the insides of the Leviathan, the colorful touches that were added into the cradle, and there are a vast number of new NPC scale rots that were created for this expansion, and each of those were given variety by slightly changing certain aspects of their NPC models, such as the horns and things on the models. The large Aurelian dragons, which we first got a peek at earlier this year during Fippy Fest, they also have some variety in the armor and the dragon head structure of each one. Some do look a bit comical, such as this Don King version of the Aurelians used for the Brood Architect, but the model for, quote, one of the largest NPCs now in the game, end quote, they're very well done, as well as their smooth animations. Some of the beta raids had issues with the small hitboxes of the extremely large NPCs, but those are the types of beta issues that developers expect to iron out as the invaluable beta process unfolds. And take a moment to appreciate the wonderful weapons in this expansion. These Azure Scale Rot ornaments are one of the weapon sets in the expansion, and each one is a work of art. They're some of my favorites we've seen in the game. Now, if I did have one disappointment with the expansion, it's also one that is shared by the development team, and it's this. I wanted to see the Leviathan in the Norathian sky. In the recent live stream, the devs explained that they tried multiple iterations to make that happen, but they just couldn't make it work.
Just wouldn't allow us to put it in the sky in any way that you could see it, and it made sense to be as big as it actually was.
I can tell you that there was a lot of interest in trying, especially early on, in trying to make that work.
Yep.
And there were a couple people who just weren't going to give up. It was just one of those things where, okay, we have exhausted every possibility, so it's just going to have to be a no.
I still would have loved to look up in the sky and see hints of this huge Leviathan. It seems like it should have been possible, given that on Norath we have this image of Drenal in the sky, and yes, that's Drenal, Norathian's second moon. Luckland is veiled and you can't see it in EQ1. On Luckland we see Norath in the sky, and in Plane of Sky we see whatever this is, maybe Drenal. Instead, the artist came up with a clever viewer of the Leviathan that is visible in Hodstock Hills, and that at least gives us an idea of what the Leviathan looks like. Outside of that very minor, superficial detail, the expansion is pretty good. I asked many players throughout beta what they thought, and overall there was positive feedback about the expansion. The lore is rich, it's well thought out, the zones are beautiful and large, and it's amazing to think, after 25.5 years, EverQuest continues to put out engaging content with their incredible 31st expansion, The Outer Brood. Okay, so what do you think? Is that your first time seeing The Outer Brood, or maybe you played in beta and you have an opinion? That's what the comments section is for. Go there, I want to hear what you have to say about what you've seen so far in The Outer Brood. By the way, all of those cool weapons that we saw for The Outer Brood, they have to be designed, crafted, and meticulously modeled before they end up in the hands of your character. And nearly all of the weapons you see in both EverQuest and EverQuest II are created by a single artist.
I am Aaron Bisnett. I'm Artist 3. I've always been a kid growing up that drew in the margins, always swords, always a magical staff. I'm kind of a blacksmith at heart. I'm always making weapons, shields. It takes me about a day to make the geometry of it, and then I spend the next day after that texturing it, because there isn't just texture artists or geometry artists or modelers. It's me, so I get to handle it all the way through. I've streamlined my process to the point that I do, out of all the different sets, all the different items like weapons per set, there's like 5 textures, because I've taken, like, the swords are on one texture sheet. The volume of them that I make on a regular basis for each expansion, it's considerable.
How many weapons, shields, things, how many do you think you've created over the time you've been here?
For EverQuest, we're talking thousands. We're talking thousands. I mean, again, with this expansion alone, it's over 190 items. There's 3 different sets, and then there's a base version and there's a raid version for each set. The first set, the designer wanted the pieces separate. So it isn't just a solid blade sword, it's like a sword that's being held apart from itself. And so it's a very magical set. So there's like I said, there's a base version, and then there's the raid version, which is essentially the same item, but with an effect emanating off of it.
What's a secret or an Easter egg that people wouldn't know about EverQuest?
Everything that I've ever put text on is real, and the text says something pertaining to the lore of that content or what the reason for that item was made.
Do you mean like it's in a different language?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we have fonts for every race and draconic everything. And so, yeah, if there's ever...
There's symbology.
If I put text onto something, and if you see text on an item for something recent within the past at least 6 years, if there's text on there, it says something.
Is this specific to EQ or EQ2 as well? Both, okay.
I'm living my dream, man. I'm living what the 9-year-old me, it's what he wanted. And I get to do it, and it's amazing.
For EverQuest Online Adventures fans, that's the PlayStation 2 version of EverQuest, things have been pretty exciting with the latest expansions. There have been little bits of EQOA sprinkled in both, so here's a look at the Norath of the past and how it looks in the latest expansion for EQ. I absolutely love creating this show for all of the different games in the EverQuest universe, but it is a lot to do alone, so I need your help. Do you have ideas for the show, or think you could help keeping the worlds of Norath alive by helping to create content for the EverQuest show? Well, I am always looking for help, so whether it's creating articles, story ideas, or even becoming a part of the show yourself, I'd love to see more involvement. Just go to EverQuestShow.com to see how you can help out. And you can also go there to nominate for the Fippy Awards, including nominating your guild if you're feeling up to the challenge for either EQ or EQ2. As always, thank you so much for watching and continuing to support the channel. Make sure you click subscribe and click like, and I will see you in Norath.
We gotta be the best we can be. And though sometimes we don't want to, still we gotta chase our dreams. Reach up and reach high, because we're gonna pull through and give it all we got, even though it can seem hard to catch and make it happen. But we can't start sliding, come on, and do what you gotta do to fight on. And so no matter what comes your way,